All right, so the first step to submitting a pull request for the final project tests is to create a fork of the finproj-tests repository. So here I am at GitHub at the JHU Interprog/finproj-tests repository. So if I click the fork button up here in the top right, I choose my personal GitHub account as the location where I want the fork to be created. And now I wait for the fork to complete. Okay, so now this is my fork. It's basically my personal version of the finproj-tests repository. And now the next step is to make a clone of my fork. All right, so now the next step is to make a clone of the fork. Basically, you want to create a local Git repository that is an exact duplicate of your fork of the finproj-tests repository. So on the GitHub page for your fork, click clone or download. You will probably want to use the HTTPS version of the repository URL unless you've configured your GitHub account for SSH. So I'm going to use HTTPS here. Click this button to copy the repository URL for your fork. Then in a terminal, I'm going to go into my Git subdirectory and say git clone, and then the repository URL for my fork. And so now Git has cloned my fork, and if I go into the local directory for the local repository, it is now an exact duplicate of my fork. Once you have made your fork of finproj-tests and cloned it, at that point you can copy test programs from the tests subdirectory into your team's project repository, so your local clone of your team's final project repository, and essentially that's where you should be doing the development on the test programs, since that way you're testing against your team's implementation of the game classes. So when you have made some useful contributions to one of the test programs in your final project repository, copy it back into the tests subdirectory of your clone of your fork of finproj-tests. So here, I have made some changes to gametest.cpp, and specifically what I've done is I've added some tests that use a chase hero entity controller to control the Minotaur, and then the tests verify that the Minotaur properly chases the hero. So I am going to commit that revised version of gametest.cpp to my fork of finproj-tests. So first I will git add it, and then I will git commit with a meaningful commit message. So tests for chase hero. Now I will push that to my fork. All right, so now my changes are pushed, and if I refresh my page here, we'll see that I now have a commit against the commits that are already in the finproj-tests repository. And so at this point, I am ready to submit a pull request. Once your fork of the finproj-tests repository has some commits in it, at least one commit in it, you can create a pull request by clicking the new pull request button. And basically, you don't really have to do anything specific here. Just click create pull request. You can add a comment if you want to, so more awesome tests. And then create pull requests. Create pull request. At that point, you've now handed over responsibility to the CS220 staff to check out your changes and merge them into the main repository. All right, so once your pull request has been accepted, it becomes part of the commit history of the main finproj-tests repository. And so that's something to be aware of, is that whatever publicly identifying information is associated with your GitHub account is going to become a permanent and public part of the commit history. So if you are not comfortable with having that information in the public commit history, you are welcome to submit improved tests to us by email. There are instructions on how to do that in the README here in the finproj-tests repository. The README also explains how you can synchronize your fork of finproj-tests with the latest changes that have been made to the main repository, and that will be very useful if you want to get tests that have been contributed by other students. So it's a good idea to do that periodically.